Let's go to the foreign editor at The Australian, Greg Sheridan. Now, Greg, let's start with Penny Wong's comments there. What did you make of her careful, understandably cautious response and really sort of wanting to embrace the comments of the Polish leadership, calm at a precarious time?
Well, that's right. I think the chances are that Russia probably didn't do this on purpose. You can't rule it out with Vladimir Putin, but it wasn't a hit on a coherent Polish target. If Putin is desperate, one of the things he might do is escalate, and one of the ways he might escalate is by attacking, say, an arms depot in Poland intended for Ukraine. But it's probable, I think, that this was an accident. It's still tremendously serious, because if it was a Russian missile, which maybe was knocked off course by Ukrainian interceptors or something, it's still the first time Russia has struck on NATO's soil. It's just barely possible, I suppose, it was a defensive Ukrainian missile knocked off course as well. So, you know, Penny Wong is absolutely right. We've got to establish all the facts first. But if it's a strike, even an inadvertent strike by Russia on NATO territory, that's an enormously grave development.
The Albanese meeting with Xi and also the Biden meeting with Xi Jinping, both of the allies and many other nations have been urging China to speak out strongly against Russia. They look like they were taken off guard, I think, to some extent. But what's your read on those meetings? Quite momentous meetings there in Bali, Greg.
Well, Kieran, they're important meetings and they were useful. I think it's important that we don't overplay their significance. They don't actually change anything strategically. The Chinese are in serious contradiction and non-violent conflict with the United States and with Australia. Whole host of issues. We could take up your whole program to list them. Illegal occupation of South China Sea islands, cyber theft of security information, constant cyber attacks, Western citizens, including 2 Australians, arbitrarily imprisoned, kept as hostage diplomacy, and so on and so on and so on. None of that changes. However, the Chinese have done themselves enormous damage by the aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy that they engaged in the last few years. You've only got to look at it. The Quad is solidified. Japan is going to double its defence budget. Australia, South Korea are increasing our defence budgets. Europe sees China now as a strategic competitor. So it's in China's interest to change the tone. Now, it's a good thing, of course. It's a good thing to have a calm tone and to have professional interaction amongst leaders. It's a very good thing, and it helps you avoid any accidental conflict through a lack of communication. But I think we mustn't overestimate this. There is no strategic reset. The term Cold War is so fuzzy you don't even know what it means anymore. But so it's a useful development. But the underlying contradiction between all of China's strategic aims and all of the strategic aims of the United States and Australia remains. So, you know, it's good, but it doesn't change anything fundamental.
Speaking of that phrase, not changing anything fundamental, I wonder what you see the Trump declaration this afternoon. What does that do in terms of the Republican politics as it looks to 2024? Because he made the announcement at Mar-a-Lago, almost poetic in the sense that it's Florida where his biggest rival is, that being the governor of that state.
Yeah, I think if the Trump candidacy damages the Republican Party and its chances for 2024, you can never write Trump off. I mean, he's enormously unpredictable, but he is a tremendous election loser now. He sort of won a fluke in 2016, lost the popular vote by 3 million, won a lot of very narrow state victories to win the Electoral College. He got smashed in the 2018 midterms. He lost by 7 million votes to a near senile Joe Biden in 2020. He injected himself and became the centre of the midterms in 2022, hoping to receive all the plaudits for a great Republican wave, which should have emerged out of the travails of the Biden administration, instead of which the Republicans have had a shocking result, really a terrible result, except for Ron DeSantis and a couple of others. So Trump is a tremendously diminished figure now. His announcement address at Mar-a-Lago showed that perhaps eventually he's learned a little bit of something out of the last few years, because he tried to talk more about issues and a little bit less about himself. It didn't have the same hysterical, crazy tone that a lot of his rallies have, but on the other hand, it was kind of low energy and rambling. His tactic would be, if he's hung on to 35% of the Republican base, he would hope that he gets a whole lot of opponents in the primaries and that he can knock them off one by one and win with a plurality of votes. I think it's in the Republican interest to coalesce quickly around one non-Trump candidate, so that all the non-Trump candidates don't spend their energies trying to kill each other, so that they become the alternative to Trump. My guess is Trump won't win the primary, and if he does win the primary, he won't win the election. But it's generally a bad day for the Republicans. The utterly toxic, counterproductive quality of the Trump brand has been the dominant factor in the 2022 midterm elections. And if he brings the same qualities to 2024, the Republicans will lose. Although I think part of what he's doing, he may yet not run, he may pull out. Part of what he's doing is trying to stave off all the legal prosecutions, because it's a bigger thing to prosecute a candidate for the presidency than just to prosecute a normal private citizen.
Indeed, it is. Greg Sheridan, foreign editor at The Australian. Thank you, as always.
Thanks, Kieran.